Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are back with another Counselor Reacts. That's right, and today we're reacting to Dado on this fine Thanksgiving day. I just want to say, I hope you guys have a awesome Thanksgiving. Even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope it is a wonderful day with you, your family, your friends, whoever you may be spending time with. That or your cat, or if you're playing video games, game outs, brothers and sisters, have a happy Thanksgiving. But nothing says being thankful more than watching a Dado Elitist take. But why not stop giving there? That's right. Let's keep on giving on this day of days. I'm also going to give you my own personal Elitist takes. That's right. You're getting double the Elitist takes. We're reacting to Dado, and then I'm going to give you my Elitist take as well. So the video is how a fake ammo brick made me completely give up. And it's, I'm assuming it's based on the counterfeit changes. And so we're going to jump in and we're going to see what it's all about.
Everyone, Elitist Dado here, and I'm just really tired.
Hold on 2 seconds. Just to verify, to make sure that you all can hear. Really, I know that's been an issue in the past. Make sure that Dado is nice and loud for everyone.
Before you get mad at me for what I'm going to say in this video, just know that Bungie has already folded to community demands. They nerfed counterfeit already, so I'm just yapping just to yap. That fight's over. Let me yap for a few minutes here, and you can move on, knowing that this feedback is just being screamed into a black hole.
And that's the thing, right? Like, we can have a discussion and a thought process on the changes and just modifiers in general. And I'm assuming that's what this conversation is about. I hope it's not just about counterfeit. But there's still some modifiers that are lingering. We'll talk about in a minute.
Recently, Bungie has been trying some new modifiers in the game. Some of them a negative modifier to make the game more challenging. And all I've seen is constant bashing of these modifiers. Some of it deserved, some really not. And
based on my comment section, this is true. I did a Grandmaster where people were talking about Savathun's Worm, and people were telling me, like, oh, wait until you get this modifier, you do this modifier, you're going to have such a bad time. And so I'm going to wait to see if he talks about each one specifically, and I'm going to give you my take on them. But here's my first Elitist take. Some of the modifiers are not as bad as people made them out to be. I don't know, like, personally, some of these were not bad. They weren't bad.
And I'm just losing the will to continue to have discussions on this kind of stuff pretty much at all anymore, partly because, at least very recently, Bungie immediately folded, and partly because it feels like people will never be happy no matter what. It feels like.
I know I'm stopping a lot, but he's not really saying what's the elephant in the room. He lost the fights, he lost the argument because he is in the minority. There has been so much outright hate for, like, let's say counterfeit, that Bungie had no choice in order to satisfy the small population that is still playing their game. They had no choice but to fold, because if you listen to the minority, you are only going to keep the minority. Now, do I think that should be the case? My personal opinion in video games, and here's the Elitist take, a game for everyone is a game that no one will enjoy. And I can think of a bunch of games right off the top of my head that people are really hate. Like Dragon Age Belgard was this garbage piece of crap that's watered down to try to capture so many different people. And no one likes that game. Very few do. And so when you have this situation where you're trying to throw your net out too far, no one gives a crap about your game. Now, do I think Bungie should make good modifiers? Yes. Do I think, is he right that there were some bad modifiers? Absolutely.
It's like a pointless conversation to even have anymore. From things that I've been reading recently about these new modifiers, it truly does not feel that people want any form of difficulty, any form of struggle in this game at all. I don't think it's really a, oh, people just misunderstand how the modifiers work kind of a situation, although it very well could be. I just think
he's right and he's wrong. Let me tell you why he's wrong. He's giving people benefit of the doubt in this community. And elitist take, there are too many people who do activities and have no idea what they're doing. Now, you can blame them and you can also blame Bungie. But they literally, like, I'll give you an example. Prison of Elders literally spells out what you have to do, and people won't do it. They just like, huh? What? I need to do what? I need to kill a guy with special ammo? No, I'm going to use primary. What? You want me to use a heavy? No, primary. I want to use a primary. Boo, boo, I'm going to smash. Hulk smash. I'm going to use ability. I don't want to use my gun. I don't know. No. I'm sorry, I'm being very facetious, but that's what this elitist take is about. Like, he's actually, Dado's being nice. He's giving the community the benefit of the doubt, where I have spent playing Fireteam Finder and playing with people and Grandmasters. I have seen an oscillation. I hate that modifier, but no one seems to understand. I literally watched someone running double GLs and like a rocket launcher. I'm like, do you even know how this modifier even works? Please. It's in the name. You click on the icon and it tells you what it does. So no, people generally, there is people who just don't like the challenge, and that's absolutely where he's right. People do not like challenge in Destiny. There's a large population that does want handouts. They want their golden sticker, and I get it. I can be sympathetic and empathetic to their time. I have a full-time job too. I may not have like a wife and kids, but I have a full-time job and I still play the game. Like I think there's a middle ground, and there's an egregious side and on both sides where people want this overly sweaty farm, and there's people that want their golden sticker. Whereas I think there needs to be a sweet spot. If you ever play a real MMO or a real looter shooter, you're going to grind. But the people on this side that wants their golden sticker, they've never played a real MMO. They have no idea what like a real grind is. They have no idea. And my advice is, here's my elitist take. If you don't like a grindy game or something that involves you looting, don't play the game. Go play Fortnite or Minecraft. Go play something else. I'm sorry. A game for everyone is a game that no one likes. Granted, I will give them a bone and say that Bungie has kind of waved this in front of their face, like, hey, this is how the game is. And then they taken it away. Oh, this is a fun game. Oh, well, now we're going to add these modifiers you don't like. Oh, well, we're going to make things easier. No, we're going to make things harder. We're going to give you all this loot. Oh, now you can't craft it. So I will give them a bone and say, you know what? It is also Bungie's fault from flip-flopping. Bungie doesn't know whether they're going to make it for veterans, they're going to make it for casuals, they're going to do both. It is just this inconsistency. So, yeah.
I think that it is another case of players thinking that Bungie making things difficult or making changes is a punishment because they hate us. I feel more like it is a case of this used to be like this, now it's different, or it's harder, or it's changed. Bungie hates us, and I hate them for doing this to us.
I don't know if people really think, well, okay, I'll take it back. There is a population of people that think that Bungie actually does it to just stick it to the man. Like, ask Grenadier. I remember Grenadier Jake, like a year ago, making that video on Christmas where he was saying Bungie's jerking off to their sadness, which I need to revisit that video because it's kind of funny now that all the things have transpired. It's kind of true to a certain extent, but I don't like, people do over dramatize that Bungie hates them. I think that's giving Bungie too much credit.
Every time Bungie tries to make something different or difficult, they immediately get bashed. Every form of difficulty outside of 2 days out of the year is almost universally panned, and I'm just really tired of playing the other side. At this point, I'm just kind of like, yeah, all right, fine. Do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. What forms of difficulty currently exist in the game or have existed? We have your increased health and damage on enemies, otherwise known in pretty much only this community as artificial difficulty.
I think that there's definitely increased health in other games, but I don't think Bungie would do it in a way that is satisfactory. And it is, and you let's take an example. Like if you think of like WoW and all these other games, there's probably increase in health, but there's also actual mechanics. If we're talking about how Destiny 1 used to be of raids, where there was the master raid or the prestige raid, and there was bonus mechanics that added to the difficulty of it and health, that would be acceptable. But when you're just like, oh, here's just more health, it is artificial. It screams, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is going to be just it. Now, do I think that we should have more health? I think not necessarily on bosses, because, I mean, yeah, no one wants... I personally think it should be in the enemies we face. I think that definitely their enemies should be a little beefier. I think some of the majors and yellow bars do feel tankier, but the red bars, outside of like, if you're using like meta stuff, they fall over, they crumble, and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna smash and kill everything as a Titan, which I did do a couple Grandmasters as a Titan, and it felt really fun, but not really challenging, and that's my elitist take on that.
We have encounter mechanics, although I think people are talking about stuff beyond your typical stand on the plate, throw the ball mechanics that you would find in everyday activities. We're talking real mechanics here. We have timers, where the game demands some form of efficiency from its players in order to complete some kind of a challenge. And finally, the main driver of this video, activity modifiers. While I tend to sympathize a lot with the hatred of things like famine or glass or something like that, Bungie was trying some new stuff recently that I thought was at least more interesting. Okay, artificial difficulty. Boosted enemy health and damage, the most traditional way of increasing difficulty in all video games pretty much ever, is commonly viewed in this community as lazy and uninspired.
It is, when it's the only thing they do. Let's just get that, and absolutely. If that is the only feature that they do to try to increase difficulty is, oh, just more health, it is artificial and it's lazy.
I'll give you that it's not the most creative way in the world to boost up difficulty, but it is certainly an easy way to provide some kind of increased combat challenge. Bungie also boosts the efficiency of the enemy's combat prowess, their AI, if you will, to be more accurate, more aggressive, the works. And despite that,
I'm gonna be honest. If you all have ever played Halo, like I'm talking about like Halo 2, especially if you're doing lasso, if you play the base game, the AI is just stupid. But you play lasso, Legendary All Skulls on, they become like an elite death squad, and it is nightmare fuel. It is so gosh dang challenging. Like I'm gonna be honest. Here's my elitist take. If Bungie were to do lasso for Destiny, the community half the community would roll in an early grave. They would just roll. They would open up a hole, jump in it, and say, "I'm out." Like they would not. They don't know what difficulty is. Not even the inkling of what difficulty is, because lasso is the challenge of challenge. I can't wait to do one day. Like, I want to do all Halo, but like I'm just saying, like people don't know what real difficulty is, especially when you have AI that just never misses. Now, there's some instances where AI is overly tuned. Like I'll give you an example. In the first Descendant, when you fight like Colossus, which are like the big bosses, they have attacks that just track you. They will literally go around the corner because they have 100% accuracy, 100% track, and it is so bullcrap. It is not fair, and it's not challenging in the sense of, oh, you just get good, use your skills to survive. No, it's like you can't avoid it. You get hit and then you die, or you don't die, whatever. But the point is, stuff like that, overtuned. But when you have like Halo, where they are aggressive, they don't run away, you can't flinch them. They're barrel rolling to the left, they're barrel rolling to the right, they're pushing up as a team. Like that's really good AI. Not you're like, Star Trooper, boop, 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 boop. Oh, I missed a couple of shots.
I still frequently see people ask for better enemy AI. People pretty much universally hate this method of difficulty increase.
Why?
Fine. But it is easier to make happen than some other things.
Again, smarter AI is, I don't understand why people are so opposed to it.
Next, the people yearn for mechanics. They desperately want everything to have a mechanic, despite the fact that we still have people complaining that even the most basic of mechanics or instructions are ignored by tons of players.
Can I offer an elitist take? I want mechanics, and I will always be an opponent, but over half the community can't do mechanics. There are people who still don't understand how to do the light patrol event. Even if you're just modeling it, you're showing them how to do it, they still don't do it normally. And if you're like, oh, well, that's just a public event, like no one cares about that. How about the corrupted strike? Literally, you throw a ball, you pick the ball up and throw it, and it obviously indicates that it's charged because it glows and vibrates, and then they throw it back at you, or they throw it at a wall. They don't even drop it. They just toss it, and you're like, bro, drop it. Like, just drop the ball. It is insane that people for the longest time hated the corrupted Grandmaster because they didn't understand how to get past the elevator in a quick and easy way, because all you have to do is pre-charge or throw the balls to do more damage to the shielded enemies. I have nightmares doing Grandmaster on Corrupted because people couldn't get past the elevator. In fact, it was so egregious for the community that you could sit back and if you watched for 2 seconds and to see your two teammates, if you saw them and they did not throw one single ball to another person, you knew to immediately leave that team, because that's what's going to happen the entire Grandmaster run, where no one's going to throw the ball, charge it so it does more damage. Now, granted, again, could Bungie have done a better way to advertise and explain that mechanic? Sure. May I offer you a game that doesn't give you mechanics? Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a challenge. It doesn't hold your hand. This isn't Fortnite. This isn't Minecraft. This is a looter shooter game, and my elitist take is there should be some things that make you turn on your brain and actually think about it, and experiment, try it out, or at least question what people are doing when they interact with you. If I throw you a ball and then it starts to glow, oh, maybe I should wonder that there's something going on here because it suddenly started changing. I don't know, that's a rant, but it's an elitist take.
Whether that's the player's fault for not learning or Bungie's fault for not exactly teaching these things is not what I'm looking to discuss at the moment. For some reason, mechanical difficulty is okay in people's heads unless it's too much, like something like Valka, but combat difficulty is almost never allowed. And these aren't even dungeon or raid level mechanics that I'm talking about. We're talking basic reading comprehension in Tomb of Elders level mechanics.
Oh! I just said that! We're on the same brain length.
And raid mechanics have historically stayed in those places because those are the highest tiers of content in the game and typically require advanced knowledge of the game in order to complete, meaning their existence is more justified in those activities. While I would love for these kinds of mechanics to be introduced into a Grandmaster strike, it hasn't happened. It probably never will.
Nope.
If it does, it would likely be in this next era of the game coming in 2025, assuming Bungie has some sort of philosophical change of heart. GMs are just a different style of endgame content.
The GMs right now, they are at a level, like, they're not making nightfalls that make you do actual mechanics because of the debacle that is the Corrupted Strike, where they experimented with mechanics. The outcry and hatred for the Corrupted Strike has encouraged them to make strikes that have little to no actual mechanical except for stand on plate, collect X, dunk here. That's it. That's all they'll do because it's all that a half of the community can comprehend. He's absolutely right.
Bungie wants the mechanics and the advanced thinking stuff to be in raids and dungeons, and perhaps they just want GMs to be more of a test of your combat abilities. Both forms of content and difficulty are allowed to exist. Next up, we have any kind of a timer. Timers are a great way for games to nudge players along at a certain pace of play, meaning you can't take all the time in the world to complete an activity.
Whisper of the Worm, Outbreak Perfected. But also, most recently, the day one dungeon run. I'm sorry. I think that they should have never took the timer from the base dungeon of Vesper's Host. The first encounter is probably one of the most funnest day one experiences I've had in a long time. You're min-maxing, working as a team, coordinating, doing this, trying to be as efficient as possible, crunching the time, like just that nuts to butts, just right there. You're just like, you barely have 10 seconds to dunk and get the win, and you're like, we did it. We solved this mechanic. We solved this encounter, and we're as efficient as possible. It wasn't necessarily just survival. It was also, how can you be most efficient with your time? And my God, it was probably one of the best challenging experiences I've had, just with a timer. And that's all that was. It was like, you're under level, but also a timer. That's what made the difference. If I wanted to just play being under level, like do a master version of that encounter, but it wouldn't be the same because the timer adds a whole nother level of challenge that you just don't get. And so, man, it's unfortunate we just don't have activities. Imagine Bungie did a timer and a raid encounter. Holy crap. I mean, technically, in some instances, there's like a hidden one. But imagine if there was like an actual, like, very small amount of wiggle room timer where it's like, you have 3 minutes to do this thing. Just get to it. A, B, C. Wait, what am I talking about? Literally, Salvation's Edge has that in its own first encounter. I'm just a dum-dum. Yeah, it already does that. Never mind. Disregard that. I'm a dum-dum. I've slept since then. It exists. More Grandmasters like that. Let's do Grandmasters with that. Whereas, like, sections that are timed, they haven't done that, and they refuse to do that. But we need, like, sections like that are like Vesper's Host, where you have a certain amount of time to complete it, like 3 minutes. Now, I'm not saying do the whole Grandmaster in 3 minutes, but I'm saying like a segment, a task of some sorts.
It is the urgency of the situation that creates the difficulty. You need to know your stuff so that you can progress quick enough. I cannot recall a single time where people saw that there was a timer on an activity and didn't immediately hate it, maybe outside of something like Whisper or Outbreak missions because they were novelties. Timers have been hated in Destiny, going all the way back to Destiny 2 launch.
Well, let's be honest. If we're talking about OG Whisper of the Worm and Outbreak Perfected, it was a lot shorter, if I remember correctly. I believe it was. They were very generous in expanding the timer for the revamps or the bringing them back. Let's be honest, though. People did complain about it when it first came out. People were so upset because I failed it. We also didn't have nearly as many casuals because it was only the veterans playing. So it wasn't as big of a outcry as it is now. But yeah.
When Nightfalls had a timer and you needed to do a certain objective to extend it, Bungie continues to use timers in certain pieces of content.
I remember that.
Most recently, in Tomb of Elders and the first encounter in Vesper's Host during the contest mode. And we have people rage quitting Tomb of Elders if they fail a single critical objective as a result.
I'm going to be honest, though. I'm going to be here's my elitist take. And he probably will disagree, but if you are at the very beginning, you should absolutely leave that team every single time if they don't do the objective. The Contest of Elders is at its easiest time at the very beginning. And if people fail to do the most basic, easiest challenge at the get-go, they're going to throw the entire time. Instead of spending 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, you're going to spend over an hour trying to do it. And you have to think about yourself. And here's my elitist thing. I don't give a crap about you. If I'm playing and I'm matchmaking, I don't care about you. I care about me. I care about my time. And if you are not going to respect my time by not, we're in this social contract where we're doing this challenging activity, matchmaking. The contract is, I'm here for loot. I'm here to play the activity. I'm here to do the thing. And if you're not willing to do the thing, like the objectives, then I am no longer required to stay and play with you. You are not going to respect my time. I do not care about you. I'm leaving, and I'm going to find a different team that does respect my time. It is not a make-a-wish. I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm not your mama. I'm not going to wipe your butt and pat you on the back and give you a gold sticker. I don't have to take you through Prison of Elders version 2. I don't have to. That's my elitist take. I'm going to play for me. And if you are not going to play, that is the benefit for the team, which, again, if you're playing objectives, you get through it faster. You get all the loot. It is objectively benefiting everyone, especially casuals. Casuals often complain about, oh, well, I don't have time for this. Well, you don't have time. Maybe you should do the objectives, and then you can get through the activity faster. Oh, who would have thought? Oh, who would have thought? You do the objective that's usually right here. It tells you how to do it. And then if you do it correctly, you get all the warden's judgment up to ×3. You get to skip a lot of activities. You get out very fast. Ooh, more loot and a faster rate. It's almost like, hey, maybe you should do the thing. Oh, I know I'm being facetious, but it is an elitist take.
Banes are a relatively new addition to the game, where
certain
enemies will be granted with a unique skill that makes them more of a threat than the average enemy. Most of them are a bit tame right now in most parts of the game, but generally speaking, I like the idea behind them. Sort of champion-esque in nature, an enemy that sticks out a bit more and has to be dealt with in a special way.
I think Banes are better than champions. Not only does it not require you to have a specific weapon to deal with, in some regards, they are harder than champions. They have a more immediate impact than champions. Oh, there's an overload that's teleporting all over the place? Okay. What's that? There's giant meteors coming at my face directly? Yeah, I think I'm going to take care of that guy besides Mr. Flippy, who's just teleporting all over the place. Yeah, I'll worry about that later. No, there's meteors coming at my face right now. I think unstops are probably the only ones that are the most terrifying because they literally go to you in your face. Even anti-barriers are really not that much of a threat unless you're talking about like the Colossus, because they have Gatling guns that will just murder you in your sleep. But outside of that, everything else, it's like Banes immediately impacts. There's an immediate impact of gameplay in that moment, and I want to see more.
I'm not going to go over the individual balancing of each Bane here, but generally speaking, they're a neat idea to spice up combat in higher difficulty tiers. By extension, champions have existed for a long time now, and people also hate them, although I would say that they're considerably more tolerable to deal with since the Lightfall champion's stunning adjustments. I think a lot of people miss the fact that in my Inverted Spire video that I was running Stasis and a Chill Clip Fusion.
He's talking about like the fact that there's all these different things you can now use. I'm just going to say this right now. Here's my elitist take. Champions make content easier. I know. And I'm usually very against the artifact mods for stunning champions because it pigeonholes you to use specific weapons, and I hate that. So you can just pretty much try to rely on weapons that have keywords that circumvent that. And you're like, screw that, I'm going to use what I want anyways. I'm just going to try to hoard all these weapons that have like Jolt or have like Chill Clip on it. Like that's why Chill Clip is like the bee's knees right now, is because it circumvents the crappy artifact design. I think champions make the game too easy. That's my elitist take. I just said Banes and immediately impact you. You can't ignore them. And sometimes, depending on what's going on, they're more challenging than champions. Champions, I'm going to say it right now. Champions literally discount the challenge of anything. Why do I have to care about dying when I can die 20 times, but there's like 30 champions and they're the easiest thing to kill? And I'm not joking. When you stun a champion, they melt. They just evaporate into nothing. Whereas beefy mini bosses take a lot more time because they don't take more damage. There's no stun mechanic, so they take more damage and they hit hard. Whereas champions are like your get out of free jail, like, oh, I can just die a lot. But as long as I kill like all these different champions that are just spammed in this Grandmaster, I essentially get to ignore worrying about dying. And here's another elitist take. I think that champions should mostly be removed from it. And the only way to get tokens is that they just give you a like 20 right off the rip. And that's all you get. Or if I'm going to be generous, maybe if you get to like a checkpoint, you get like 5 extra tokens. But I think they should just give you all the tokens up front and that's it. You can't earn them anymore. That's my elitist take. You want people to really feel impact? Take away champions because they're essentially pointless. And if you're going to say, oh, well, why don't you just take the tokens away from the champions? Well, that just defeats, like I just said, dealing with champions is really not that hard. You might as well just replace them with Banes because then they would be a challenge. So just remove the champions, give us a cap, a limit on like the tokens, and that's it. That's all you get, because then it forces people to actually respect the game. And if you die a lot, guess what? You're now punished because you can't just rely on killing 30 champions that are scattered throughout the raid or the Grandmaster in this case. That's my hot take.
Which, yes, does deal with overload champions without much hassle. Champions don't appear to be going away for the foreseeable future, and they've been in the game this long that I think people have just accepted them as a form of difficulty via loadout requirements. So, no increasing the damage of enemies, no increasing their health pool, no adjustments allowed to them really whatsoever. You can't have extra mechanics beyond the basics, and we can't have speed play factor, and we're completely over champions for that matter as well. We can't have health-gated bosses. We cannot have immunity phases.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think health-gated bosses are... The reason why people don't like health-gated bosses, because if you're not doing a Grandmaster, or if you are doing a Grandmaster and you optimize, you can't really farm it, and no one wants to spend 3 hours on a boss just because it has a like health gate. I don't know very many other games that have health gates. They exist, but not as egregious as like Destiny sometimes. Just I'm gonna be honest.
Either that
I think like if we look at First Ascendant, there's action like you can melt a boss within a certain amount of time, but if you like, there's a mechanic where if you do so much damage, it throws them into a frenzy mode. So if you kill them fast enough, you skip that frenzy mode. But if you don't kill them fast enough, it goes into frenzy, and then you have to do the frenzy mechanics to get it out of its frenzy mode, and then you can resume damage. And I think if they did that, if Bungie took that and implement it in their game, where people who are optimized can just like nuke the boss as much as possible, and then there's a frenzy mode, which is a base mechanic you interact. So instead of having this generic, let's sit and wait and kill some enemies. No, you actually have to do like, maybe you have to shoot a crit spot or do a certain objective, and it makes it happen, Captain. I don't know, like something that there's actual mechanic. I know Arms Dealer has that where you collect the bombs, but you have to kill a bunch of crap. You have to kind of wait. Like when I think of actual mechanics where you can just immediately engage and you don't have to wait on things spawning, you just do it. You just do the thing or hit the crit spot or whatever, and then as depending on your personal speed, that's how fast it can go.
That leaves modifiers, in which this latest batch is also a massive issue for the community. What I think people dislike about these newer modifiers, which is part of the reason that I like them, is that certain ones are build agnostic. Some of them, like counterfeit, like haste, cannot be build crafted out of. They cannot be completely nullified by switching an armor mod around or changing your subclass or putting on an exotic. They are just something that you need to figure out how to deal with in the best possible way in the moment, in the heat of gameplay, which introduces its own set of challenges that you need to learn to overcome.
I'm going to be honest, and he's probably going to talk about it. I'm going to let him talk about counterfeit, and then I'm going to give you my very high elitist take on it. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that you can't ignore counterfeit, you are very wrong. You are so incredibly wrong, because people already play in the back. And counterfeit, that's all you got to do. Just play in the back. You don't even have to get up close. You just literally get your pulse rifle, your scout rifle, sit in the back. You never have to deal with counterfeit, like, ever.
They are dynamic. You cannot just do the exact same thing that you've been doing this whole time.
You absolutely can. Again, counterfeit, you can continue to do what people usually do, which is sit in the back safely, blink away, never have to engage with the mechanic at all.
Need to adapt. You need to come up with a new game plan. You need to play a different way in order to succeed compared to how you would normally play. With some other modifiers, they directly interfere with your buildcraft and are trying to push you into the unfamiliar.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm okay with that. Like, Savathun's Worm is a good example of that. It's not as bad as people say it is. I actually like it.
And these are things that Destiny players, at least vocal ones, just hate doing. They hate being pushed to do something that they're not used to doing, or simply just don't want to deal with them at all, despite that being the entire point of these modifiers. Let's go over them. Some of them are more interesting than others, some of them I like, some of them I don't. Let's start with Counterfeit. Counterfeit was where enemies could drop a fate brick of ammo, or even an exotic engram, and if you got too close, it would explode, hurting you in the process. The way you could tell it was fake was by 1, shooting it, and if it exploded, it was fake, or 2, getting close to it and watching it glow brightly. A pretty funny mechanic inspired by the Trickster boss from Forsaken. People did not find this very funny, apparently, like at all. Now, when this modifier...
Yeah, of course it didn't.
Was active on the...
Because the Trickster was not a Grandmaster. It was just literally a mission that was at level. So, of course, they found it funny then.
Lightblade GM, which I think had the arc threat modifier as well, increasing Counterfeit's lethality. I only got to do a couple of attempts at it, with my second attempt being successful. The next day I had to go to London, so I only had 1 day of gaming in me. And despite me playing on what one would think would be a terrible build for such a situation in a Consecration Titan, I was able to overcome this challenge without too much stress, at least stress related to Counterfeit. The reason is because that I knew that Counterfeit was a way to try to push me out of melee and finisher range of enemies, lest I risk getting killed in the process. It was Bungie's way of saying, hey, if you play with a certain kind of setup, you are at more risk of dying to this modifier, so maybe consider trying something different for this challenge. And rule number 1 comes flying in. If you force Destiny players to change something about their playstyle, about their loadout, their one way of doing something, and it's not in an overwhelmingly beneficial way for them, they will be upset about it. If this modifier...
Am I the only one that didn't change any gameplay? Like, yeah, melee and smash stuff. But, like, am I the only one that just, when I did this, I didn't even care to acknowledge Counterfeit's existence. It was there, like, it jingled my jangles once in a while. It was very noticeable when I watched my clanmate just die constantly, which was funny as hell for me. Like, there was moments, right? It was funny, but it didn't mean it was challenging. And we'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, we'll hold that nugget because we're going to talk challenge in a minute.
Was named, you have a 25% chance of dying if you melee kill an enemy. People would still melee kill enemies and then complained that they died. This was not a challenging modifier to overcome. All it took was playing the activity a little bit slower and being a little more aware of your surroundings the first couple of times through. That is all Bungie was asking of players. Be more aware of your surroundings and maybe try a slightly different but still completely overpowered build. And that apparently was too much of an ask. Bungie has since neutered this modifier in the latest patch to the point where they could probably just remove it completely from the game.
They should.
I understand that in lesser difficulty content that having Counterfeit around might have been less of a I need to play strategically vibe and more of a dude, it's Vanguard Ops, leave me alone vibe. But at the same time, it's Vanguard Ops. There is nothing at stake to get that upset about when it comes to these modifiers. Next up, we have Haste.
All right, he said his piece. Here's my elitist take. If you think that you think Counterfeit is challenging, that says more about you than it does the modifier. It's not challenging. In fact, it's not challenging at all. You can absolutely ignore it. You don't have to engage with it. You literally just play safe, shoot in the back, and that's it. Also, if you think, for the people out there that love this modifier, if you think that this adds challenge, that says more about you. And I don't care if you're a veteran. It says more about you. Like, You apparently have never touched a Dark Souls game or any real challenging game at all. If you, for any moment, believe that counterfeit is a challenge, I'm sorry. You are just wrong. It is not challenging. It is annoying. Annoying does not equal fun. Annoying does not equal challenging. And that's what it was. It was just annoying. It wasn't challenging at all. What was annoying is constantly dying. The challenging part is if it had a real impact by killing you. And it really didn't, because champions exist. You can just farm a bunch of champions and it circumvents any challenge of dying to a random engram that popped out. Granted, the challenge that I've seen for the comment section was, oh, well, I've died because it was hidden under a dead body that was just chilling there, or it was hidden in the grass and I couldn't see it. I think that's fair. But outside of that, outside of playing prop hunt with the random crap in the grass, I wasn't a challenge. And he even acknowledges that. He says it wasn't even a challenge. So if it's not a challenge, why does it exist? Why does it need to exist? Oh, because Bungie wants you to play a different way. Well, fuck them. If it's not to make the game, make it a challenge, then fuck off. Like, if you need Bungie to tell you to play a different way, grow the fuck up. Will you need mommy to hold your hand and wipe your butt because you're incapable of making an adult decision to do something different? What are we talking about? If it doesn't increase challenge and it's not challenging, then why does it exist as a challenge or an attempt at challenge? It's not. It's annoying. It's a garbage. Not even funny. I mean, sometimes it is kind of funny. It's not even overly funny, like constantly if you're farming. It's not enjoyable except for moments. And if you enjoy it, that's great. Pop off king. But there is nothing you can say or do to actually make me believe that it's a challenge. And if you think it is a challenge, that's, again, that says more about you. And I challenge you to play an actual challenging game like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, because that's real pain. That's real challenge. A fake engram or fake ammo that blows up, that's not challenging. I'm sorry, especially when you can sit in the back and never engage with it. I just think that is, I know, a hot elitist take, but if you're an elitist or a veteran who sees counterfeit as a necessity because it's a challenge, you're really not, I don't want to say you're not a veteran, you're probably a veteran, but you're probably not that good at the game.
Where the game is asking you to move around.
I haven't tried
Otherwise,
this one
you're
yet.
gonna take a little bit of damage until you start moving.
It hasn't seen
in
that
Tomb of
bad.
Elders, this shouldn't be a problem at all. The main issue felt like it was in the revamped inverted spire strike, which I thought was a fantastic first time playthrough, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess
I'm going to be honest. I haven't done this Grandmaster yet, so I'm spoiling myself, which makes me really upset. But whatever, I digress.
Everyone hates it because it's actually kind of hard now and it's longer to do.
Yeah, whatever.
Haste was another modifier that didn't greatly impact my experience playing because the game told me that if I stayed moving, not only would I not take damage over time, I would actually be healing myself for doing so. I am moving most of the time anyway, standing still for only very specific scenarios. I strafe back and forth a lot when I'm playing, so maybe if you aren't used to doing that, or maybe you're just used to the plink-plonk lifestyle of a scout rifle, this was a bit more debilitating for you.
See, he just mentioned sitting plink-plonking, staying in the back. This is a modifier that actually does some impact, or at least I don't know how much it hits you for if you're staying still. But even then, you can move. You just sidestep as you're pling-plonking in the back. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's these modifiers that are interesting, but if you know how to play with them, you can just essentially ignore the challenge.
For you, which was the entire point. This modifier is basically, you can't just sit in the back and plink-plonk. Outside of the GM space, I really don't see this modifier being a significant pain point pretty much at all. Even in the Inverted Spire GM, it was rarely an issue. I have barely noticed it in Tomb of Elders, and the only reason I have was because of the disable the poison mechanic, where I stand still to disable said poison. And even the poison and standing still damage over time of haste is still not even close to being that lethal. Brawn is where you get dramatically increased health, but
I have played Brawn. I have done this Nightfall. It was not hard. It was noticeable, but the thing about Brawn is that the upside is more up than it is down, because it is so easy to spam abilities to get your health back. But on top of that, literally using innervation or recuperation or whatever the mods are, you can literally just get your health back. And not only that, heal clip exists, healing nades exist, overshield exists, frost armor exists. Like, there's things to keep you alive, but also just in general, there are so many ways to heal ourselves in this game. It is, I see it nothing. Elitist take. Brawn, whatever the hell it's called, is literally nothing but upside. I felt so tanky. It was almost laughable how easy this Grandmaster was. I did this Grandmaster in 13 minutes. It's how easy this thing is.
But you only regenerate it when you kill orange bar enemies or...
Funny enough, I'm looking at his time. He did in like 12 minutes. I did my Grandmaster in 13 minutes. Like 3 Titans, just smash everything.
Higher. But you can also heal with something like recuperation orbs. In Birthplace of the Vile, which isn't a terribly hard GM to begin with, this was a complete non-factor of a modifier. In fact, if you think that Brawn is a negative modifier, that is one of the biggest self-reports you could possibly do, because that tells me you simply take way too much damage in normal gameplay and thus have not built enough awareness and familiarity with the content here for you to be successful.
Or you don't know how to use a freaking heal clip or a healing nade or any kind of like, it tells me you don't even have a proper build where picking up the most basic orb heals you immediately. Like, that screams like you don't do Buildcraft.
Successful. If you know what you're doing, this is way more of a buff than it is a nerf, as there are plenty of enemies to kill to regenerate your health. Or you could just make a bunch of orbs and heal that way. Then we got something like Blast, which isn't nearly as interesting of a modifier on paper. This is just enemies doing more splash.
I haven't done Blast yet, so I have no idea.
Damage, which is something that can already feel inconsistent in the game, especially as a Titan who relies on barricades for defense and frequently finds himself still taking splash damage, although...
I like how he says, I had more of a problem with Bane enemies here than Blast. Again, I think Banes are better than modifiers because the impact is there and there's no ignoring it. Like, you can ignore or circumvent a lot of these modifiers. You can't ignore being shocked to death, being drained, having landmines scatter everywhere, or having giant meteors blast you in the face.
Recent buffs have made this a little less painful. This forces you to be a bit more aware of, like, enemies throwing grenades, but if you're a seasoned GM player, you're probably already doing this. If anything, this modifier actually makes you respect some of the enemies you're fighting against, something we haven't had to do in quite a long time outside of contest mode. I can understand being underwhelmed by this modifier, though. Any other sort of similar modifier, Chill Touch, Scrapper, not really as interesting, doesn't really change the way that I play that much. Those two modifiers have to do with melee attacks, but it's pretty much built into the brains of Destiny players at this point that if enemies are getting within melee range, that you're either poorly positioned or you're playing some sort of a melee-based setup, or maybe...
Not only that, like, we have Knockout where you literally can get knocked out. You have no radar, and then you can just get slapped in the face if you let a Thrall touch you.
You're playing against a bunch of Thrall. These just punish you a little bit more than usual for lack of awareness or playing a melee build, of which most melee builds in the game are very strong. Oscillation, which I didn't even get to play with because it got...
Boy, I think if they're like, if you're going to ask me, what should they remove? I would be okay if they kept counterfeit because it's annoying, but you can ignore it. Oscillation is one of the worst modifiers. It is just so god-awful. When you know how to play it, you can abuse it, but it's more annoying, and I'll get to reasons why.
Bullied out of the game that quickly, never had a chance in the first place with the community because it assigned specific weapons.
It didn't get bullied. It's still in the Grandmasters
that people had to use. I remember people hating Prestige Leviathan raids because Bungie would only enable specific loadouts for Prestige week over week, so the challenge was to beat it with a specific loadout only.
Bungie's like, hey guys, we know you didn't like this in prestige raid layers, so we took him away. But hey, we're going to bring him back just because we think maybe your opinion has changed. No one likes anything that forces people to play in a way that they don't want to play. But even more so when you tell me, oh, you have all these cool toys. Oh, we are introducing all these seasonal weapons. We're introducing like, oh, the new Iron Banner stuff. Oh, well, no, sorry, you can't use that. You only got to use 3 weapons on this side for this oscillation, and then 2. Like, whose genius idea was it? Yeah, oscillation. You have to use a pulse rifle, scout rifle, or a grenade launcher for one side to buff shotguns and SMGs. Really? So you're telling me for I have to use a shotgun. One's a special weapon and one is a primary. So I either have to use a SMG, which is notoriously not that great for GMs, or I have to use a special weapon and hope that I have ammo on demand in order to be able to integrate with this modifier. Now, I'm going to be honest, if they were intelligent and added more to the list outside of just the artifact mod weapons, if they actually put like bow or like sniper or like glaive or auto rifle and kind of made it half and half, so you have some primaries and specials and heavies, like kind of making it to where you have more than one option, but it's still like a very specific side you have to balance out. I think it would be a better experience and I would be more on board because the benefits is ×3 weapon damage, which is essentially like 3 surges. So it can be really nice. Like Skyburner's Oath, I used it in the Grandmaster and I was doing like 10k to certain yellow bars and red bars. It was nutty the amount of damage I was doing with a scout rifle that should be not doing that much damage. Granted, it was also Skyburner, so it was doing more against Cabal, but still, overall, the damage was really nice. So if you play, it can be beneficial, but I think locking it into a very specific, like very few weapons was just horrible design. And so that's why it's the worst modifiers, because it locks you into a very finite options and you may not enjoy those options at all. And God forbid you don't have like any good weapons in those slots. That's more, again, Elitist, that's more of a you issue for not having those slots in the first place. And also Elitist, you shouldn't be doing Grandmaster if you're not prepared, and having a proper loadout is being prepared. So if you don't even have weapons to fill that modifier, that is a you. And as someone who does Grandmasters, I am not required to have to play with you if you refuse to engage, again, with the modifiers and plan to deal with that in that fashion. Which a lot of people were running like the wrong weapons for that modifier.
And if people hated it back then, there was no reason to hate something like this now. It forced certain loadouts and then also forced certain weapons rotations while playing. I think I saw something about maybe the damage buffs not really being worth it or just being very, very weak.
The speed you had to rotate weapons was high, but I still like the concept. I agree. I think it sometimes it would just felt like you barely used a weapon. Like if you're in the middle of a fight of a champion, suddenly you have like a stacks of like 1 or 2, and then suddenly you're in the negative, so you're doing immediately less damage, and it feels really bad because you're having to do a lot of mental gymnastics of, oh, I've got to kill this thing, but I've got to make sure I'm flipping my weapons so I don't have a debuff. Oh, gotta do this, gotta do that. Again, a concept, I like the concept if it was a wider range of selections and like options besides just the shitty anti-barrier champion mods, which I generally don't like because of how limited it is in the first place.
That could have been adjusted. Savathun's Worm, I thought, was a positive modifier that basically just said...
It is. Savathun's mod is definitely a positive modifier in my opinion. If you think Savathun's Worm was hard, it really isn't. It was so easy. I abused using like aerial denial frames, and then I think I just used a regular primary when I was using for the ARC version of it. Like, it really isn't that hard to engage with.
This element and you'll do good, but there appears to be some clashing with the Surge mod that happens to be active on a certain activity. Some people have this idea that they must play with a Surge boosted element, otherwise they will fail.
So I think that he is being dismissive here because it's like surge mods are 25% increase in damage. You are under level. So if you are using something that is not part of the surge, you are hindering yourself. If you are not getting that 25% damage to help you combat the fact that you're under level and you are doing less damage, you are actively hurting yourself and your team. So I think for him, he has the privilege of like, oh, well, I can just pull all these people from my community on demand. Like people I'm streaming, I can pull anyone I want on demand. Whereas if you are out there playing said game with LFG, you don't have the privilege of making sure that these people are committed to stay on your team, even if you wipe. For a lot of people, if you wipe once, it's a game over. And then you have to spend time trying to find another group and then another group. And that's exactly what happened to me trying to do the arms dealer, is that someone would be really stupid and one person would leave, the team would fold, or I would call someone out for being stupid. It's like, hey, why didn't you res? And then they would kick me because they got butthurt. And so I didn't have the privilege of having a community at that moment, and other people don't either. So that's something we have to, well, he has to put his thinking cap on and not be in his little bubble. Like, oh, I'm very privileged because I can get people whenever I want and as many times as I want. And most of them, even if we fail, they'll stick with me because I'm Dado. And so he needs to get out of his bubble. That's my elitist take. Sometimes you can be smelling your own fart too much that you don't actually pay attention to how it actually impacts other people who aren't in a privileged position, such as Dado.
Now, there's not exactly a reason to not use a surge-boosted weapon in an activity, but considering what you can do when you actually embrace this modifier, this is probably something that you can let slide for a GM or two.
Now, I think that's fair. That's a fair, that is fair. You can essentially just, if you engage, let's say Void, you're using a Void aerial, the orb printer, using the little orb printer, you're printing a bunch of orbs. If you're a Titan, you're just going to be slamming the entire time. Like you're going to have Void Hunger like he does up 24/7. You're just going to slam and slam and slam and slam and slam. You're not even going to use guns. You're just literally going to slam and kill everything.
You fill the meter so ridiculously fast, and the boosted effect lasts 20 seconds. This effect is so good that I refuse to believe people actually have a problem with this. Like,
it is crazy.
No way. If you completely ignore the mechanic, shocker, you're going to be hindered by taking more damage and having less energy, but that's the point. Follow the modifier. Although apparently the negative portion of this modifier isn't even working properly. Like, tests apparently have been done to show that the reduced energy gain.
I want to be honest, I never paid attention on the reduce because I was running Warlock, and Warlock just gets things back fast anyways. But holy crap.
And the increased damage taken is not working. But even if they were working, it is so easy to stay in the positive that I refuse to accept Savathun's Worm as an overly negative modifier. Look, I know that negative modifiers aren't really viewed as fun because they get in the way of your success or your build or your plans. The whole point is to overcome the modifier, to overcome the challenge. But I think there's been one negative modifier in the entire game that people kinda liked. And that was mini screams. But they were like broken. I'm talking like crawling under the floor, crawling under geometry.
And that was funny.
Broken. We haven't seen them in years. I do think this recent batch of modifiers is the closest Bungie has come to negative modifiers that are a bit more fun than, you know, something like Glass or Famine, even if those do have their own challenges to overcome.
I'm going to have a latest take. Again, I don't think Counterfeit is fun, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it for everyone. Elitist take. I don't think modifiers need to be fun. They're modifying to make it challenging. They don't need to be fun. And I know that sounds very hypocritical because I just said that Counterfeit isn't fun, but it's also not challenging. And that's the key word. It's annoying and it isn't fun, but it's also not challenging. These are both true statements. That's not fun. It's also not challenging. And that's where we're looking for is challenge. And I think a modifier that makes things harder, that is increasing the challenge, I think is acceptable. even if it's not fun. The whole point is supposed to be challenging. Because for those that do like challenges and want to engage in that challenge, they're going to find enjoyment in overcoming that challenge. Now, if you don't like challenges, here's Elitist take. You shouldn't be doing Grandmasters in the first place.
But people still view all of these modifiers as not fun in some form of another, but they're one of the last tools that Bungie has to change up gameplay in an engaging way. I realize how insane it is to say that negative modifiers shouldn't always be fun, because the whole point of playing a video game is about fun. I get it. Like, I don't have a good answer to that. I just don't. I find...
Again, a game can be fun. There are plenty of game modes and things you can do in Destiny that you can find fun. Grandmasters are the fun that people who do Grandmasters find fun in the challenge, in overcoming that challenge. They feel satisfied. Just like people who it's like Elden Ring. People bitched and complained about Elden Ring being too hard. That's what it's supposed to be. That is the whole point of the Souls-like's existence. It is supposed to be a challenge. Now, granted, were there some, like the DLC, was there some challenging things because it was broken and they had to fix it? Absolutely. But there were literally people who continue to bitch about Souls games needing to have a difficulty scaler. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't play Souls games. They're not for you. Again, when you make a game that's made for everyone, it's not going to be enjoyed by anyone because it's meant for a specific group. And that's why it is so popular. There's a reason why Elden Ring was Game of the Year, despite the fact that people bitched about it being too hard. It's because the people who enjoy the games speak louder and are more of than the small pocket of people. You should never cater to the small minority. You should never cater. Now, does Destiny have a minority that's loud? Probably. Are veterans the minority now? I don't know. I can't speak. I'm not Bungie. They can look at counts. I think a majority overall for like the counterfeit was both veterans like myself and casuals. But when it comes to challenge, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know where bracket. Am I a 1%er now? Am I the low minority like Dado that's voicing out? Is this a casual game now? Have I dropped? I don't know. But my honest elitist take, again, this is all elitist takes, is that Grandmasters were never meant for casuals and they should never be for casuals. If you want, like, here's the reality. If you want a base gun, you can use a base 5 out of 5 God roll and it is not going to be much different than an adept. You do not need an adept weapon to have a good weapon. Like, let's use, for example, the new glaive this episode, which has chill clip. You can get the base version and it will do fundamentally the exact same thing as the adept version. Adepts are for the people that want to min-max, and that's why they're in Grandmasters, and that's for the people who are min-maxing who want the challenge. Grandmasters should not be for casuals.
And these modifiers fun. I find them engaging in a way that changes up my gameplay experience at least a little bit. But I'm very clearly in the minority here because it feels like people view Bungie adding anything that changes how they play the game as a punishment, if it's a negative thing, more than a way to make a thing more engaging. It's not a punishment. It's just Bungie.
And I would encourage them to play a Dark Souls game, which they probably have. Let's be honest. They're probably the same people that are complaining about how Elden Ring is too challenging, like the DLC, and they need to make an easy mode for it. Just download the mods. Seriously, just if you can't play a game that's intended in the way it's meant to be, which is a challenge, just download mods.
Bungie trying to make things a little bit different and interesting. So if Bungie can't scale up content by increasing enemy health, by increasing their damage, by having health gates or immunity phases, if they can't use timers, and if they won't use more complex mechanics or modifiers that affect the status quo, then like what? There's nothing left. What's left? I think Banes are cool. Are we at least embracing Banes? Like more dynamic gameplay?
More Banes. We need more Banes. I think Banes are fantastic.
Play situations instead of the same spawns in the same places every single time. Like, please tell me we're cool with Banes. Please. A common suggestion, the most common suggestion of trying to increase difficulty that I've seen is death by 1,000 cuts. Simply add more weaker enemies to the game so that there's more to deal with. Two issues with this in my eyes. Number one, memory constraints. Bungie has said that they're already putting in the most amount of enemies they ever have into some of these more recent activities, but there are only so many enemies that can be put on your screen at once. At some point, a limit will be reached if we're not already there. Bungie has already been introducing more and more enemies over time, and it's done very little to slow people down.
No, I'm going to say that having more enemies isn't going to change, especially when you have a Titan that can literally smash and send an ocean of flames that just blows everything up. More enemies actually, it's just like having a bunch of champions. At some point, the more you add, it chains your abilities and it makes the content even easier. Like, for a lot of builds, it relies on killing a lot of enemies. And if you don't kill enemies, you don't get that energy back. So there's some starvation. So it makes it harder to keep your abilities up for the next encounter. Starvation is often sometimes more of a challenge than having a wave of enemies that you can just keep feeding into.
I don't know if we're at the cap yet, but I'm guessing, at least with some old hardware still in the mix, that maybe there's not that much more room before we hit the ceiling on this. Number two is that we already have the tools to deal with this difficulty increase suggestion. A few more dinky enemies on the screen is not going to stop Trinity Ghoul from just destroying everything or whatever other
Who's using Trinity Ghoul in a Grandmaster
weapon that is just insanely good from destroying everything. It's not going to stop any of these insane builds from destroying everything. So if people hate being forced to endure any kind of difficulty adjustment that Bungie wants to make or try, what is the solution? Well, I think they're working.
The solution is sadness.
On it right now. Instead of Bungie making any of the adjustments to the difficulty, it'll be you. It'll be you, the player, doing however much difficulty adjusting you want to do, and that will determine the quality of the loot that you get. We've had similar systems in the game before, but never developed out to the degree that Bungie appears that they will be doing in their 2025 expansion launch, whenever that is. June, July, I don't know. It's been a long time coming, and it's probably something that should have had more time put into it by now, but hopefully it can address this very glaring issue in the community going forward. The people who want to crush their skulls can do that, and the people who just want to coast can do that.
I felt my soul leave my body because I felt that. I've done that before in a Grandmaster.
And we can just all have our own separate paths that we go on. And I'm really hoping the system works out for the best. I do have other concerns with a system like this, but if they come to fruition, then we'll talk about it then. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
All right, so just my final thoughts. I think he's absolutely right. My elitist take is I think the system, it should be like Halo. Lassos, you turn all the skulls on, it adds difficulty, you get more points, there's more modifiers, and then I think you should get the premium amount of loot possible from turning all the settings on. Making the hardest encounter possible should give you the best stuff that people who are taking easy mode get none of it. They don't get any of the stuff that you get. And I think that's fair. Now, are people going to bitch about it because, oh, well, they're getting all that and I can't get it? That's on you. And I think people are going to still bitch. Bungie could literally give you the keys to the castle and people are still going to bitch because people are going to be able to do things that are harder and more challenging, while other people who want to have an easy, give me my gold sticker right there and then moment, they're going to complain because they're not getting the same loot. Even though it is very, very well proven at this point, you don't need adepts. Adepts are for people who want to min-max. Let those people, the elitists, the veterans, the 1%ers, the 10%ers, the other half of the community, whoever they may be, let us have it. Whereas you just enjoy the game in the way that you want to. And that's what it sounds like. I hope that's the way it is. I hope that we can have the best of both worlds, where people who are casual or only have a little bit of time, they can make the challenge that they want, try it out, experiment it. In fact, maybe this will be a great system because people who would normally never try to do Grandmaster can slowly work their way up to a more higher difficult challenge in a way that is better than just the pre-generic loadout that we have right now, like expert or legend or what master or whatever the hell of all the options. They keep changing. I think it's advanced now, not expert. But they can essentially integrate themselves by changing it to fit them slowly. That would be, maybe that's good. I don't know. This has been a very long video, but this is your Thanksgiving video, and give thanks for the most elitist, sweatiest. I'm actually sweating. Unironically, I feel like a sweat bag, and I actually am sweating because I got the heater on, and I got all lights on me and everything. Like, anyways, I know I'm going to be pissing a lot of people off, especially more of my casual viewers. But you got to know, when it says elitist takes, you should know that that's what's expected. And you may disagree with me, and that's okay. You can absolutely disagree with me because it doesn't actually matter, because when Frontiers comes out, you're going to be able to craft your own experience, hopefully the way you want to. So nothing that I say will matter at all. And I also, my whole thought on people, casuals not doing Grandmasters, I can't stop you. I don't have to play with you, but I don't have to stop you. All right, I'm not going to stop you. I can't stop you, and I don't care to stop you. Play whatever you want to play. That's your rights, and I can't stop it. I just gave my opinion. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more. As always, game out, and have a happy Thanksgiving if I didn't trigger you already. Gobble, gobble.